The Outsider podcast shares the opinions and analyses of Drew Landry. They are his thoughts, and his thoughts alone, and do not necessarily reflect every member of his audience or newsletter readers. Now, on with the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Outsider Podcast, the best politics podcast west of I-35 and north of I-20. I know that's really specific, but still. I'm your host, as always, Drew Landry, and in today's episode, I introduce a new section of the show and then get into the main topic for this episode. And since I am a baseball fan, and this is baseball season, I'll call this new segment the Trot Around the Bases, where I'll give a quick highlight of the top 4 events from the past week, along with a quick take about them. So let's get started here. When we trot down to first base, Pam Bondi out as the Attorney General. It was announced yesterday that President Donald Trump fired his third AG of his presidency. All right, he had Jeff Sessions first, and then he had William Barr second, and then he brings in Pam Bondi. Let's remember, Pam Bondi came in because Matt Gaetz, creepy Matt Gaetz, didn't have enough support in the Senate for a confirmation, so he went with his second choice, Pam Bondi. Bondi is out, and the question is why? And, for me, it really comes down to 2 reasons. One is that she bungled answers concerning the president's connection to Epstein. And every time she was asked about this in a committee hearing, she would do this thing about just complete distraction. There was one time where she goes, the Dow was up 53,000 points or whatever. That's a history. Why are you not talking about that? It was the dumbest response I think I've ever heard. Ever. So she was never really able to insulate the president and exonerate him from Epstein, and has done now she's done a good job of hiding it, but she was never really able to keep him from any sort of connection during that entire investigation, and was never able to truly disconnect him from Epstein. I think that's reason one. Second one was the fact that she wasn't able to fully weaponize the Department of Justice for the president's retribution tour. Like, for real, he kept wanting, the DOJ to go after a whole bunch of people. For instance, James Comey, who went out, who was on this council in the first term of his that led to the Russia investigation. And so they wanted to go after James Comey. That failed. Then they wanted to go after Letitia James up in New York for all the crimes that he committed up there, and then that failed. And then they've been trying to go after Democrats for whatever reason, whether it was Adam Schiff or whether it was the people on the January 6th committee. All those things failed. Every one of them. So there was just no success at going after the president's enemies, and so she's out. Let's just be honest here, though. While she failed at that, she gave him everything that he asked, which was blind loyalty. And she couldn't last more than a year in this spot. That's really sad. That's first base. Let's move on here to second base. We trot on down. We have the Supreme Court heard the birthright citizenship case of Trump versus Barbara, and it looks like the president's going to lose out here. He was there. He went to the hearing, only to leave midway through. I'm guessing because he got bored. It became less about him, so he was no longer interested. Aside from that, the Solicitor General, who is the one who argues cases in front of the U.S. Supreme Court on behalf of the federal government, looked completely unprepared. And he was owned throughout the entire conversation. The questions that he was asked by the justices, he had no answer for them whatsoever. And if he did, they were just bad. He simply didn't bring his A game when his A game was needed. He brought his F game. He brought no game. And so the Solicitor General simply got the yips. And it looks like the president's claim that birthright citizenship is nothing, which is a terrible claim, but it looks like that whole argument is merely on feelings and emotions, not on constitutional law. We trot on over to third base. Then we get into President Ramblefest. I like to often refer to President Trump as that, not out of disrespect, but more of a gotcha back to all the people who hated Biden, who hated President Joe Biden, and called him Mumblefest. Really because he was old. That's just what it came down to. And I'm of the mind that this president just rambles. Ramble on, as Led Zeppelin sang. That's what he does. And so President Ramblefest lost another set of voters because not even he could figure out what he was saying. In this speech that he gave about Iran, all right, that's what I'm talking about here. He gave this speech about Iran and our involvement in it. He's trying to give everybody an update. And honestly, he just looked lost out there. He had no clue what he was saying. Just completely, just not there. Here's the gist of it all. He tried to sell an unpopular war to the American public who didn't want to hear it. Made a terrible pitch about it. He threatened NATO. And which is funny because he keeps threatening NATO and then he wants NATO's help. Dude, when you threaten people and they don't help you, I wonder why. This isn't like some difficult math equation. This is just basic stuff. Just you got to roll your eyes about this stuff. He gave little information as to what's going to happen next, except we're gonna win very soon. It's going to be over very soon. Very soon, it's going to be over. Okay, I mean, imagine if I was telling my wife, if she asked me when I'm going to be home from work, and I just said, very soon, and say she asked me that at 10 a.m. and I'm not going to be home until 4 or 4:30 or 5 p.m. and I just keep saying very soon. At some point, that's not going to fly. And I don't know what very soon means, but I can tell you the American public has a barometer for very soon. And it's not going to be a very big barometer. It's going to be very, very short. So this very soon stuff better pick up. Let's also understand that the fact that the president is still wildly unpopular. His approval ratings are just dismal, even in Republican polls. Even when pollsters are conservative, they're still bad. So this was just really another waste of time for him to go sell himself and sell whatever it is that he wanted to do, which was bomb more things in Iran. And all of that is unpopular. There's no question about it. So it was a waste of space, except to raise the Trump profile for some investor somewhere else. And so as we round third and we head home plate, there's a report that comes from the Houston Chronicle from a U of H study, University of Houston, that teacher pay has dropped in Texas. According to this report, the average teacher in Texas makes about $63,000 a year. At least they did in the 2024-2025 school year. That is almost a $4,000 drop from what they made in 2023 to 2024. So teachers are expected to do more. They're being paid less. And this is just great job, Texas. Great job, state leaders. You guys are doing awesome. So wonderful. Question here for all the teachers. Why do you keep voting for these people? Let's just understand that. I think you really need to have a road to Damascus thinking here about your political preferences at the state level. They treat you like crap, and you still vote for them. They simply don't care about you. They want to add more things to you. These leaders say that you are woke. There are state representatives who believe that if they had 2 weeks to prepare, they could do your job. I just want you to hear that. I want you to know that. That's a direct quote from one, by the way. Okay? Well, I shouldn't say direct. It's a quote nonetheless. The gist is there. I could, even if you were in the world of finance, they could think that, well, I could teach a math class if I had 2 weeks to prepare about math. I could do that, is really what they're saying. This is, and yet you keep voting for them. Teachers, you got to wake up. You got to start thinking that different leadership is going to yield different results, and it can only be better. I mean, my goodness. So that is the trot around the bases. There's your quick 4 main stories that I felt were important from this past week. And now I want to get into the main story, the main point that I want to really get into for this episode. And this has to deal with probably the dumbest thing since, really the dumbest idea since unsliced bread. You know how things are the best thing since sliced bread? This is the dumbest thing since unsliced bread. And folks, it's this annexation of New Mexico. Okay? Like there's now an idea, a legit, serious idea to want to annex, for Texas to annex parts of New Mexico. Texas House Speaker Dustin Burrows from Lubbock directed a state legislative committee to explore the legal and economic implications of adding one or more New Mexico counties to Texas. Of course, this has been dubbed New Mex-It. New Mex-It. I mean, that's stupid. Of course, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham is being real here and said this is stupid, because it is. I mean, matter of fact, her quote to the Dallas Morning News is, "It's a ridiculous proposal." Okay, and it is. And the New Mexico House Speaker Javier Martinez was even more blunt about it. He said this. He goes, "Over my dead body." So, what House Speaker Burrows has said here, he told the news this. This is what the news. Roll my eyes at that. It says, "This conversation is ultimately about culture, opportunity, and the right to choose a path that reflects the shared values of the Permian and Delaware basins." He goes on to say that Southeast New Mexico deserves a real voice in its own future, not one dictated by Santa Fe. Oh my gosh, it's as if he's living in Texas. And if it's as if he is living in a city like Houston, and all the other places, and all the bills that are being brought out are meant to govern Harris County. And all the other places, all the other counties have to feel the same brunt. What a concept. This is exactly what he's doing. I mean, he's saying how dumb this idea is, yet he's part of a group that does this idea. We got to go after Dallas. We got to go after Houston. We got to go after Austin and San Antonio. And in doing so, we have to punish all the other places. But here he says, Southeast New Mexico deserves a real voice in its own future, not one dictated by Santa Fe. He goes on to say it's a conservative, it being Southeast New Mexico, it's a conservative, energy-rich region with a fierce independent streak. And West Texas has shown what's possible when you respect oil and natural gas, protect property rights, and trust local communities. Okay. The first part I'll give you. Oil and gas, all right, fine. But the property rights, that's hilarious. That's flat out hilarious. You're not protecting anybody's property rights. I have to have a permission slip to dig in my backyard. I live in Texas. If I want to dig in my backyard, I got to go. I got to ask for permission to do that. My place is owned by the city. This is my land. I should be able to do what I want with it, but I can't. I got to ask for permission before I put one shovel in my backyard. No protecting property rights here. What the heck are you talking about? And then he says, trust local communities. Boy, that's hilarious. Are you telling me that this leadership enriches local control? Oh my gosh. This is coming from the guy who brought out the quote unquote Death Star bill, which that's so dumb. That's such a stupid label. But this is the one who says, we don't really, he buys into the governor's idea that we don't need cities and counties to govern themselves. We just need the state to do whatever that it wants to do. And the cities and counties just need to abide by it. And he says this is a good idea. And he goes on to say, West Texans know what it's like to trust local communities. Dude, you're the author of the bill. You're the one who has fought against local cities and mayors and city councils and county judges for a lot of your career, and yet here you are saying that that's a prideful part of being a West Texan. Oh my gosh, the hypocrisy is real. I would really hope that somebody in the media would have called him out on this and say, well, weren't you the one who authored that whole quote-unquote Death Star bill, and yet you're saying you trust local communities? Aren't you the one who capped property tax rates? This is just... Aren't you the one who has said that teachers can only prescribe certain books to read? This is dumb. So, of course, this has been brewing for a while. I mean, Speaker Burrows signaled support for this back in February, just a few months ago, writing on X that Texas would gladly welcome Lee County back to Texas, where it rightfully belongs. Okay. Of course, this thing gets brought up ever so often because there's people in the New Mexico legislature. It's called the Roundhouse over there in Santa Fe. Randall Pettigrew and Jimmy Mason, Republican representatives, introduced a measure that would allow voters to decide to secede from the state. This is so stupid. You do know that there was somebody like years ago who actually brought this up to the legislature for Texas to do this. There was a point where there was West Texas, and they go, well, you're not listening to us, so we're just going to have our own little... We want to break away from us and just be called known as West Texas or whatever. That didn't go anywhere. This bill that Pettigrew and Mason from New Mexico introduced didn't go anywhere. Of course, there's this long history between Texas and New Mexico. When Texas seceded from Mexico in the 1830s and was its own country, it claimed a large swath of land that what now became New Mexico. It gave up its claims to the disputed land in 1850. So it ceded all of that. Like I just said, we give it up. So there is no legal claim to bring it back. But in this order, Speaker Burrows asked the legislative committee to complete a detailed analysis of the state and federal statutes needed to initiate the annexation process. This is so stupid. Look, this isn't the only thing that was brought that was mentioned in this whole interim committee thing. There's a host of other things, like wanting to study the actuary and science of the teachers' retirement system, TRS. That's fine, but this is right back to the dumb shit. And pardon my language here. I'm sorry. I don't really like to curse, but you have to call a spade, folks. This is stupid. And anybody who actually thinks this is a good idea, I don't know what you're being sold here, but this is dumb. I mean, he put this on an interim committee study so that, we can have an idea about what to do. So they can pass a concurring resolution to call on Congress to allow a portion of eastern New Mexico to come into Texas. I don't know, man. I mean, this is the kind of crap that little Briscoe Cain would do. In case you don't know who Briscoe Cain is, he's a state rep out of Deer Park, which is around the Houston area. Briscoe Cain, he's running for Congress right now. He's probably not going to win. But he's not going to be in the state ledge next year, which is great. And he would always bring up these ways to kind of make Austin a proper, like actual state property. Like D.C. is federal property. Make Austin like that. So therefore, the legislature, anytime it makes a law, it can just also include Austin and all that, and it could directly regulate Austin. It's laughable. I would expect him, whose only impressive thing that he has done in his time as being in the legislature is grow a mustache. I mean, we all know he can't ride the adult rides at Six Flags because he's about 5'2". All right. And the only impressive thing, as I said, that's the only way that you can tell that he's an actual adult. But he has done dumb stuff all the time. And a good campaigner because he keeps winning elections. But this is the kind of stuff I would expect from him. I would not expect this from House Speaker Dustin Burrows. Speaker Burrows, has the reputation for being serious. Like, there's this pro wrestler by the name of Lance Storm. Great wrestler. Great technically sound. Just as exciting as a box of rocks. It's almost like he and Colin Allred have the same personality. I mean, just not there. That's Dustin Burrows. That's Speaker Burrows. I mean, serious guy, probably an effective lawyer. I don't know. I mean, he's a millionaire. Lives in a big house. But I guess he's serious enough to be the House Speaker. Has enough respect of his own colleagues, which he had to earn over time to get here. But this is dumb. Like 5th grade, 4th grade level dumb. It's as if you're saying, the house is on fire. But you go, you know what? I think I want to go, instead of trying to call 911 or trying to put the fire out, I think I'm going to go play in the sandbox across the street. I'm going to look into that. See if that can help. That's what this is. He must think things are so good in Texas that we don't need to actually focus on real things that matter. Like our healthcare issue. I mean, we're still one of the worst insured states of health insurance. Like it's still one of the highest uninsured states in the country. Let's not talk about that. Let's not study how bad this voucher system is, even though we know that what I mentioned last time about how there aren't going to be many choices and most of these applicants for the voucher program are from wealthy homes and they have already been in private schools and they're white. Let's not study how that hasn't really been a choice as it has been a discount program, how it's become a coupon for wealthy parents, which we were saying that the entire time. They and a bunch of other weirdo voucher advocates kept thinking, this is choice. It's choice. And he was part of it. He's been a flip-flopper on this from the very beginning, by the way. I mean, there's a there's a clip out there. You can find it on YouTube. You better go download it before it's out there and found, where he actually said whenever he first ran in 2014 that he was in favor of school vouchers. And yet you look at his record when it came to that in 15 and 17, he voted against it. Well, I'm sorry, in 17 and in 19, he voted against it. And then he comes back, and now he wants to have the conversation in 21 and 23, and then finally gets it done in 25. Let's not look into how that's not helping actual people. Let's not do a study on that. Let's not study how we can improve the classroom for teachers. Let's not do a study on how to lower the student to teacher ratio. Let's not do a study on how to improve infrastructure in the more rural areas. Let's not do a study on improving and making broadband internet access stronger than what it is and how much that would cost. Oh gosh, no. Oh gosh, no. Or let's not do a study on how much money the corporations would actually give if they were paying property taxes. Let's not do a study on that. No, let's don't. Let's do a study on how we can bring in southeastern New Mexico. Yeah, let's do that. That sounds much more fun. This is so stupid. There are times when I'm like, that's a really good idea. We ought to consider doing that. Or I applaud that idea. And look, I give props when I can. But there's no props to be given here. This is dumb. 100% dumb. And I've read all the arguments. I've heard it all. I don't need to hear anymore. They need to be told how stupid it is. And they need to be told by their own party. And they say, well, we need to take care of, we really do a good job of taking care of a rural Texas. Says who? You're going to get rid of all their schools. I mean, the lieutenant governor wants to expand this voucher program, wants to put more money in it, which means less money for public education, which means rural schools are going to get screwed. Rural health care is already screwed up. Don't care about that. You've done nothing on that. The big, beautiful bill, the big, ugly, jerk-faced bill, makes the funding for rural health care a $50 billion grant program. That's stupid. Yet the state is concerned about getting back at New Mexico. Talk about mismanagement of priorities. This is why people get so frustrated with leaders, because you totally miss the mark. I would like for them to actually say how that is going to improve the life of a student in a rural school. How is us declaring war and taking over parts of New Mexico going to improve the life of a student in East Texas or a student out here in West Texas? How's it going to improve the health care? There's no answer for it because they don't have an answer for it. And even if they tried, this is just stupid. I think I've made that point, right? One other thing I'll add in here today before we get out of here is there's some conversation. This always gets thrown around that perhaps with Bondi out, maybe the president will bring Ken Paxton as the Department of Justice leader, as the new Attorney General. I don't think Ken Paxton has the votes in the Senate to be confirmed, nor do I think Ken Paxton wants it. I don't think he wants any of that. I think Ken Paxton wants to beat John Cornyn more than he wants anything else. He wants to beat John Cornyn more than he wants to be U.S. Senator. So his own ego is going to tell him no. But That said, it's a conversation that's going out there. There's some polling to suggest that Paxton's going to win this thing. He's going to win the Republican primary runoff. And Republicans are going to have to just resign to the fact that Kim Paxton's going to be your nominee. And you got to live with that. I have to say this. This will be the last thing here. He was at CPAC. CPAC came to Dallas last weekend, and he got to be the surprise guest. Ooh, the surprise guest. And he made this point about how his faith really strengthened and got him through, got the resolve that he needed to get through the sham impeachment of 2023. It was his faith. Yeah, I bet it was. I bet it was also his faith that took him into the loving arms of Laura Olson, which was his first mistress, and then to Tracy Duhan, who was his second mistress, who is the one who was the Christian influencer with like 7, 8, 9, 30 kids. Somehow that did not... That's never part of the conversation. If anybody needs several belts in this state, it's Kim Paxton. He has such a hard time keeping his pants up. I mean, he is just his faith. His faith ought to tell him to be celibate for a little while. I mean, next month is going to be the Kentucky Derby, and that's where he met Tracy Duhan a few years ago. That's where they met. I wonder if there's going to be a rendezvous with her there. You think? Churchill Downs better be on the lookout for a lazy-eyed, ugly-faced attorney general who's running for Senate in Texas. You can always tell it's Kim Paxton because he'll always steal your pen too. That aside, the jokes write themselves about Kim Paxton. I mean, he is a punchline. But what is the sad thing about it is that he's a really good campaigner. He has no morals. He has no moral core. There is no character to Kim Paxton. I mean, he is just a philandering crook. But he's a good campaigner. He makes people forget that. And that is a really good candidate. He's going to beat Cornyn. Unless some miracle happens and Cornyn pulls a rabbit out of his hat, this is going to be the end of John Cornyn and his time in the U.S. Senate. What's interesting here is I think it would be funny if Cornyn, if he lost and then he resigns his seat, and then Abbott appoints someone and then has to have a special election. And I think that would be hilarious if he appointed Paxton to that, and then we have Paxton versus Tallarico Part 1 in a special election. And I think that would be something special. I think that would be a telltale sign that perhaps that would be a really good measurement of the Democratic enthusiasm in a special election statewide like that. I don't know if Cornyn's going to do that. I would doubt it. I mean, he is a good Republican, and he don't want to screw over his party like that. But I do think he'd like to screw over Kim Paxton like that. I even think he'd even vote for James Tallarico. Okay. That's it, folks. Thanks for being here with me. Appreciate you listening in to the Outsider Podcast, and I hope you have a really good day, great weekend. I'm recording this the weekend of Easter, and so I hope you have a good Easter and you celebrate it with those you love, and may you have a good religious experience if that's how you celebrate it. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you again very, very soon.
The preceding analyses and opinions were that of Drew Landry and his alone. They did not necessarily reflect all of his podcast listeners or newsletter readers. Thank you for listening to the Outsider Podcast. Be sure to follow The Outsider on X and on Facebook. Also, don't forget to sign up to be a free subscriber to his newsletter on Substack. Just look for The Outsider. We will see you again next time.